Landslide election win for coup leader Mamadi Doumbouya, clearing the way for the former Special Forces commander to serve a 7-year term as president. The court also said the second-place finisher Abdoulaye Yiro Alade has dropped his legal challenge on the result, which was condemned by opposition supporters online. Doumbouya seized power in Guinea in a coup in 2021, toppling then-President Alpha Condé. The court's validation required after every vote confirmed provisional results that said Doumbouya had secured 86.72% of the vote in the December 28 election against a fragmented field of 8 challengers. The Ugandan government says it is banning live broadcasts of riots, unlawful processions and other violent incidents ahead of an election in which President Joelle Muteba is seeking to extend his 40-year rule. Hundreds of opposition supporters have been detained ahead of the January 15 election, which will again pit the 81-year-old Museveni against the 43-year-old pop star turned politician Bobi Wine. More than 50 people were killed before the last election in 2021 in a crackdown by security forces against Wine supporters who accused Museveni of stealing the election. More than 300 undocumented migrants have been deported at the Maseru and Vicksburg border posts between South Africa and Lesotho. Border Management Authority Provincial Regional Manager Thabo Nkoma says they have arrested at least 100 people trying to re-enter the country illegally. Nkoma says some were apprehended with illicit goods. Dr. Nkoma says more than 400,000 travellers were welcomed at the two borders during the festive season.
Just over 222,000 travellers from the 10th of December up to the 31st of December. Compared to Vicksburg, it is just over 221,000 travellers. The return phase, which commenced on the 1st of January to date, for Maseru Bridge, we've already processed 47,000 travellers into both directions, to Lesotho and into RSA. For Vicksburg, it's just over 42,000 travellers.
Toppled Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has pleaded not guilty to narcotics charges. He appeared in court in New York yesterday following President Donald Trump's stunning capture that rattled world leaders and left officials in Caracas scrambling. Maduro said through an interpreter he's innocent and that he's still the president of his country. His wife Celia Flores also pleaded not guilty. The next court date is set for the 17th of March. Dozens of protesters, both pro and anti-Maduro, gathered outside the court before the half-hour hearing. Inside, as he stood shackled at the ankles and wearing orange and beige prison garb. Meanwhile, in Cuba, funeral arrangements for 32 of its citizens who were killed during the U.S. military raid in Venezuela at the weekend are underway. The SABC's Ditaba Tsotesi has more.
Cuba is a close ally of Venezuela's government and has sent military and police forces to assist in operations in the Latin American country for years. Meanwhile, France, in a statement, says it has repeatedly condemned what it calls the authoritarian excesses of President Nicolas Maduro's regime. These included attacks on fundamental freedoms and arrests. Paris says, however, no lasting political solution can be imposed from outside, referring to the U.S. attack on Venezuela and capturing Maduro.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective. From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine, every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
Right, let's quickly find out what's in the sports headlines this hour.
Okay, Peter, Victor Osimhen sends the Super Eagles soaring into AFCON quarterfinals, and Poland Hubert Hurkacz beat Alexander Zverev in the ongoing United Cup. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Bigile Lingwatu, thank you very much indeed, and we look forward to finding out what's been happening in AFCON.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa. From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine. Every weekday mornings on
5 minutes
Channel
past
Africa.
6 Central African time. A very good morning to you. This is the first hour of Rise and Shine on a Tuesday. My name is Peter Ndoro. Thanks so much indeed for tuning in. We're broadcasting live from our studios in Johannesburg in South Africa, and you can catch us streaming live on the internet. www.channelafrica.co.za is where you can find us, and also on your mobile apps, just go to your app store and look for SABC Plus. That's SABC Plus, and look for Channel Africa, and you can find us there and take us wherever you go. And we're also on our social media pages. Just look up Channel Africa and you'll find us. We're streaming there as well. So you can catch all the latest news, current affairs that you need to start your day right here on the program. What's coming up? Well, we're going to be taking a look at a couple of things. UN Security Council met in an emergency session to discuss Donald Trump and his military operation that captured the Venezuelan president Maduro. And as you can imagine, not much came out of there, but America did get a bit of a lashing from the council. And then we'll be looking at Uganda. Yeah, they go to the elections next week. And it looks like President Museveni will extend his already extensive terms in power. Robert Chagulani continues to be the main opposition leader. Many of you will know him as Bobby Wine, the musician. So all of that still to come right here on Channel Africa's Rise and Shine.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa. Cling, cling. Turn up the African vibe, Africa style. Tune in on the Channel Africa app or log on to our website, channelafrica.co.za. The Morning Switch Weekend with the Shy Guy.
There's a Ugandan lawmaker. His name is Atkins Katusabe, who speaks with an American accent in Parliament. So the parliamentarians have complained that we don't understand what you are saying.
Listen to him.
Come on.
Mr. Speaker, I think this is a disaster that it could cause an extinction of our entire community. Going to procedure?
Mr. Speaker, the English that is trying to put this matter here is confusing a number of us and making us miss very serious issue. It needs to speak the common English of Uganda. The English is too much.
Need a piece of paper so that we'll be able to read. The English is too much. I picture him saying order, out of order.
Saturday and Sunday mornings belong to the Morning Switch. 3 to 6 a.m. Central African Time. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
So every morning after the 6 o'clock news, what do? We bring you something we call the Africa Roundup. And essentially what it is a look back in the last 24 hours. And we take a look at the top news events and stories from across the continent and beyond to catch you up with the news and make sure that you don't get left behind. But it also sets you up for the news day today. And we do this with our team of reporters, journalists and analysts across the continent who put all of those stories in context. So what is in the Africa Roundup for this Tuesday? Let's find out. We begin in the United States, which has added 7 countries, including 5 in Africa, to the list of nations whose passport holders must post bonds of up to $15,000 to apply for entry into the US. Now, the State Department has included Bhutan, Botswana, the Central African Republic, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Namibia, and Turkmenistan on those lists. Now, this requirement makes obtaining a US visa pretty much affordable for the majority of people in those countries. The new additions join Mauritania, Sao Tome and Principe, Tanzania, Gambia, Malawi, and Zambia, which were be placed on this list in August and October last year. Meanwhile, in South Africa, the African National Congress, the country's largest party, the ANC, is set to host an historic January 8th statement celebrations in one of the cities in the country's northwest province called Rustenburg. Now, this annual event allows the over a century-old liberation movement to outline its political program, map out its strategic direction, and set key priorities for the ANC for the year ahead. Let's hear from the party's spokesperson, Mahlengu Bengumotsi.
Members of the National Executive Committee have been making inputs into the statement over the holiday, and so we anticipate that it will be not a long discussion to then adopt it, because it is a statement of the National Executive Committee. We will also have a discussion on Venezuela, what has developed in Venezuela. We are going to adopt the formal message of the ANC on the matter of Venezuela, and we wanted to wait for this National Executive Committee, given the gravity of what has happened there, so that we can have a political discussion first and not just issue an occasional statement.
Now, the National Elections Authority in the Central African Republic is expected to announce the results of the December 28 presidential elections. Meanwhile, international observers have described the polls as largely peaceful and orderly. President Faustin Archange Touadéra is seeking a third term in office. Let's listen to this report by Tutongo Beni.
The December 28 vote marked an unprecedented moment in the country's political history, bringing together 4 ballots in a single electoral exercise. Municipal elections in particular had not been held in the Central African Republic since 1988 and were a key provision of the 2019 Political Agreement for Peace and Reconciliation. Incumbent President Faustin Archange Touadéra is seeking a third term after contesting the election. Observer missions from the African Union and the European Union have praised the conduct of the polls, noting higher voter turnout and the absence of serious security incidents during voting hours.
Now, South Africa's International Relations Minister, Ronald Lamola, has reaffirmed South Africa's commitment to principle-based leadership on both domestic and global stages. His remarks follow the U.S. military's large-scale strikes in Venezuela and the capture of the country's president, Nicolas Maduro. South Africa's International Relations Minister is speaking now.
As the government of the Republic, we were taken aback by that posture of the U.S. because it is in violation of the UN Charter. It is in violation of the territorial integrity of Venezuela. And it's in violation of all principles that should govern respectability of sovereign states. So that's why we have issued the statement, and we have called for the sitting of the UN Security Council. And we're looking forward to the meeting this afternoon with the hope that progressive decisions will be taken and robust engagements will happen.
The Air Traffic and Navigation Services, ATNS, in South Africa has confirmed that the operations at the country's largest airport, OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg, has returned to normal. Flight disruptions, which caused delays and diversions, were due to severe weather, including thunderstorms, and not staff shortages, as was being speculated. ATNS spokesperson is Mpilo Dlamini.
We're hit by what I can call temporary human resource constraints in our workstation at OR Tambo International Airport Air Traffic Control Center. So what happened there, there were colleagues that were not available yesterday to go to work because of various situations. some were sick out, some had family emergencies. So what we then did yesterday, we then employed what is called emergency contingency plans, so that we can bring people on board so that they can continue and work in those particular workstations. Then later in the day, we were hit by a thunderstorm in the eastern part of Johannesburg that also hit OR Tambo. The issue of the human resource constraint, what it caused is what is called I can call flight delays. There were flight delays that we experienced yesterday because what we did with the shortage of staff at that particular moment, we employed what is called tactical measures, meaning that you had to space, the departures at intervals of about 3 minutes instead of about 1 minute or 2 minutes. So that's why we then compounded into a backlog of departures. So then it created a delay in the system.
Right, and that's the Africa Roundup for this day. We'll have more for you tomorrow after the 6 o'clock news. Stay with us. We're going to get to East Africa shortly to find out what's in the news there. No doubt Uganda featuring prominently.
Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za.
Now, this festive season, the National Credit Regulator urges South Africans to spend wisely and avoid a January financial hangover. With many households already over-indebted, impulsive spending, social pressure, and easy access to credit can lead to serious financial stress after the holidays. So, set limits, spend only what you can afford, and avoid high-interest loans, maxing out credit cards, or buy now, pay later deals without quite understanding the true cost. December joy shouldn't be January stress. Spend wisely. Protect your future.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Now to our East Africa wrap, where a number of developments are raising fresh concerns across the region, from deadly infrastructure failures in Kenya and new Mpox cases reported in Madagascar to mounting pressure on Uganda's authorities ahead of elections, and also a growing humanitarian strain as families flee violence in the eastern Democratic Republic of Congo into neighboring Burundi. Well, to help us make sense of these stories and their wider implications, we're now joined on the line by journalist and team leader of grassroots journalism in Kenya, Dennis Beru. Dennis, great to talk to you. Happy New Year. I hope you had a safe passage into 2026.
Thank you so much, Peter Ndoro. Happy New Year to you. We've started the year well. I hope you are well in South Africa.
Yes, we are indeed. Well, let's start in your country where there was a building collapse that triggered a major rescue operation. What do we know about what went wrong?
Thank you so much, Peter Ndoro. This is not the first case where a building is collapsing. And this is a building under construction in the capital city, one of the busy estate that is the South Sea, which collapsed on Friday. And the building which collapsed on Friday sparked an urgent rescue operation amid fear that at least 4 people may have been trapped beneath the debris. And emergency team from the Kenya Red Cross and the Disaster Resource Battalion of the Kenya Defense Forces were deployed to the scene, using the heavy machinery and the sniffer dogs to search through the rubble. And the operation was, as we speak now, they're still continuing, and authorities are now working hard to, with time to find, to reach the survivors, whether they are still alive or not. And on Sunday, the rescue team retrieved one of the 4 people who were trapped in, and as per the authorities, the only 2 security guards who are trapped in the rubbles. And as we speak now, the authorities are still looking for one more person who is believed to be under the ground floor of the building. As early assessment by the Cabinet Secretary, Geoffrey Ruku, suggests that the structure may have been failed due to column overload. Officials say the building had been approved for 12 stories, but had reportedly reached between 14 and 16 stories before it collapsed. And following the incident, authorities ordered a suspension of all construction activities in the South Sea area, and the National Construction Authority has been tasked with carrying out fresh inspection as investigation continue into the possible violation of the building regulations.
Well, very sad story indeed. Let's hope that person is found, and I guess it's a long shot, but hopefully still alive. But anyway, let's move to Madagascar, where we hear that there's been new Mpox cases confirmed there. How concerned should East Africa be, and what lessons from earlier outbreaks are relevant now, do you think?
Yeah, Madagascar have confirmed 5 cases of Mpox on Wednesday, and this should be a concern. In a statement, the Minister of Public Health, Monira Managna, said the confirmation came after laboratory test, and that the public had been, urged to remain vigilant and strictly adhere to the preventive measures. Government spokesperson Gaskar Fenosoa said a response plan had been activated, including the provision of regular updates on national contingency plans and the mobilization coordination surveillance team. Fenosoa said, of course, an emergency public health operations center had been established in Mahajanga to search for more cases and carry out patient isolation and treatment. Of course, the center is also strengthening health checks at entry points such as ports and airport. Peter Ndoro, Mpox cases is not new, especially to the East African nation. Of course, last year we had similar cases that were reported in Kenya, but health authorities swiftly dealt with the issue, and we saw the decline of cases. So we are hoping that Madagascar health authorities will swiftly deal with Mpox cases because the disease is very dangerous, and that's why government is putting measures across ports and airport to ensure that they regulate the people who are coming in and who are coming out of the country.
Let's turn to Uganda. They go to the polls next week, Thursday, the 15th. And Amnesty International and other rights groups are accusing authorities there of torture and mass arrests ahead of these elections. How serious are these allegations, and what do they mean for the credibility of the polls, always challenged in previous years?
Yes, in a few days, Uganda will be heading to the polls, and there are concerns, and these concerns have been raised by the Amnesty, saying that it had gathered evidence on security officers beating protesters and firing tear gas at supporters of the National Unity Platform led by a singer turned politician Bobby Wine, who is now the main challenger of Yoweri Museveni in the coming polls. And the vote was marred by allegation and irregularities and state violation. That was 2021 polls. And police said they were now dispersing a violent crowd. But the victims' family told Amnesty that they were blocked from witnessing the postmortem, and they never even received a death certificate. And you see, these are the tension that escalated further on 28th of November when NUP supporter was killed at a rally. Amnesty has documented over 400 arrests of National Unity Platform supporters in recent months. And of course, there are several detainees reported being beaten, pepper sprayed, and at a said. And of course, one of the man described being dragged from a vehicle and sprayed directly in the mouth during a rally in Kampala. As the election, of course, a day approaches, fears are rising of an internet shutdown similar to what happened in 2021 election. Peter Ndoro, now the two main rivals in this election, Bobi Wine and the current president, Yoweri Museveni, who is now looking to extend the 40-year rule in Uganda. They are doing what we call, home stretch campaign, where they've been campaigning across different parts of Uganda. And we have seen Bobi Wine's campaign being disrupted by police without no reason.
All right, so very difficult and tense time there. And I guess in the end, the credibility of these polls will be raised, questions will be raised yet again. Let's go to the DRC now, and the eastern DRC into Burundi, where we're seeing families fleeing violence into Burundi. How difficult is the humanitarian situation, do we know, and particularly for children, as this response keeps keeping pace with the needs?
Peter Loro, the situation is sad in the eastern DRC and western Burundi. And since 6th of December, over 84,000 people from South Kivu have crossed into Burundi to escape intensified fighting and shelling, driving up to the Congolese refugees and asylum seekers in Burundi to more than 200,000 people. This is according to the United Nations. Many families made dangerous journey on foot over 3 to 4 days, sleeping in open and crossing flooded rivers before arriving exhausted and dehydrated at overcrowded transit centers, which provide short-term shelter to the displaced people before they move other longer terms and accommodation. And we have seen acute, shortages of food, clean water, sanitation facilities, shelter, and health care at the transit centers are putting children at risk of outbreak of life-threatening diseases such as cholera, and the children have been forced to abandon their education. And the government of Burundi announced a state of emergency on 17th of December because there are quite a number of refugees who are trying to seek some shelter in Burundi, and we understand very well that Burundi has been tackling their own issues, economic crisis, and we have seen some of the refugees coming in who are now running from violence and war that is being carried out by M23. And as per the report from the Amnesty International, of course, the people who are being affected here are children and women. And one of the refugees or people who are seeking asylum in Burundi by the name Rosalind family, they, talking to journalists, of course, they say that they witnessed people being killed, about that of them being killed, and
Okay, my brother, sadly we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much as always for comprehensive updates on what's happening in your region, reporting all the way from Kenya. Thank you so much. Asante sana.
Karibu sana, Peter Ndoro. Have a good day.
Kwaheri. That's our correspondent there, Dennis Beru, journalist and team leader at Grassroots Journalism in Kenya, speaking to us about key developments in East Africa. It's 6:30. It's time for your news headlines. Good morning once again, Joalani Tulongwepe.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective. SABC News. Headlines. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, Guinea's Supreme Court has validated results showing a landslide election win for coup leader Mamadi Doumbouya, clearing the way for the former Special Forces commander to serve a 7-year term as president. The Ugandan government says it is banning live broadcasts of riots, unlawful processions and other violent incidents ahead of an election in which President Yoweri Museveni is seeking to extend his 40-year rule. And finally, toppled Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has pleaded not guilty to narcotics charges. He appeared in court in New York yesterday following President Donald Trump's stunning capture that rattled world leaders and left officials in Caracas scrambling. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African perspective.
Time now to find out what's happening in the world of sport, and someone who's all over the news, particularly the football across the continent. We say good morning to Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Good morning, Peter. Once again, we kick off with football news. A brace from Victor Osimhen saw Nigeria ease past Mozambique 4-0 in a one-sided Africa Cup of Nations round of 16 clash in Morocco on Monday night. Nigeria kicked off with intent as Osimhen had a close-range effort disallowed for offside in just the second minute. The Super Eagles' pressure paid off in the 20th minute when Ademola Lookman scored his third goal of the tournament, latching onto a pass from Ako Adams, shaking off a defender and unleashing a precise finish into the top corner. Nigeria doubled their advantage just 5 minutes later with Adams again the provider. Adams drilled a low delivery cross the box for Osimhen to power home past hapless Mozambique goalkeeper Enan Silwani. The scoring was rounded off 15 minutes from time when Adams kept a superb individual display by smashing home Lookman's cross, completing a dominant 4-0 victory and sealing Nigeria's progression. Ivory Coast head coach Emis Faye has acknowledged the intense competition his side faces as they attempt to defend their AFCON title in Morocco. Côte d'Ivoire and Burkina Faso face off at the Grand Stade de Marrakech today. The 41-year-old famously took over from Jean-Louis Gasset during the knockout stages of the previous tournament and went on to lead the Elephants to a continental glory on home soil, a triumph that secured his appointment as permanent head coach. Ahead of tonight's match, Faye insists the mandate remains unchanged as the champions begin their title defense.
The same thing. I just want to live the same thing I live in Côte d'Ivoire. But the way will be different. Is a different competition. And another one is in a away one. We are not home, so it will be difficult. But we are ready for that, and this is a goal for all the country.
And Algeria and the Democratic Republic of Congo will meet at the Total Energies CAF AFCON for the first time in 26 years when they clash in a round of 16 at the Complex Sportif Prince Moulay Abdallah in Rabat. This will be the third meeting between the sides at AFCON. Their first encounter came at the 1998 finals when Algeria claimed a 1-0 group stage victory, Abdelkader Faroui scoring the only goal in the 36th minute. And in motor racing, Australia's Daniel Sanders surged into the overall lead of the Dakar Rally after winning Stage 2 in Saudi Arabia. The defending motorbike champion completed the 518-kilometer route from Yanbu to Ula in 4 hours, 13 minutes, finishing 1 minute, 35 seconds ahead of KTM teammate Edgar Kennett, who suffered minor crashes. Let's wrap it up with tennis news. Poland's Hubert Hurkacz returned from a near 7-month injury layoff to stun German world number 3 Alexander Zverev 6-3, 6-4 in the United Cup on Monday before Iga Swiatek beat Eva Leis 3-6, 6-3 and 6-4 to secure the Group F tie in Poland's favor. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Fikile Lingwati, thanks very much indeed. I am now curious who might be the favourites for the AFCON. Must have a chat with him a little bit later on. Who do you think is going to win the African Cup of Nations this year? Some teams are really steaming ahead and others surprising and disappointing their countries. But this competition growing in stature over time. All right, stay with us. So much still to look at. A disturbing story in South Africa that involves a 6-year-old girl that sadly fell to her death. We'll tell you a little bit more about that coming up.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
The sound of Africa is evolving. Experience our new mobile app. Free to download, free to connect.
Right, it's time to find out what's happening in the world of business, commerce and economics. And to tell us a little bit more about that, we say good morning for the first time to you, Tabiso Luhuko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Cheers to rest and renewal. Festive African greetings from Channel Africa. Go on, download the Channel Africa app. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
6:40 Central African time. Our apologies there. We're going to try and get to the business news, hopefully a little bit later on, having some challenges connecting to the business news team with Tabiso Lehuko. But we'll bring you business news coming up in a while. But first, let's take a look at this story in South Africa. A civic organization, Civic Root Advocacy, says that it's outraged by media reports that a 6-year-old girl lost her life last Friday after falling into a pit latrine in the country's northernmost province, the Limpopo province. Now, they highlighted the fact that in 2026, a child can still die due to the continued use of pit latrines as a profound violation of South Africa's constitutional order, and that Section 11 of the Constitution guarantees everyone the right to life, while Section 10 affirms the inherent dignity of every person and the right to have the dignity respected and protected. Channel Africa reporter Sisi Sekalo spoke to the managing director at Civic Root Advocacy, Siabulela Gentile, who said that the sanitation system that exposes children to death is incompatible with either of the rights.
One, we'd say that this loss was entirely preventable. And it is actually not an accident in our view. It is an institutional and systemic failure. You know, it's a consequence of a failed state, actually.
What are organizations like yours doing to fight the reality that many South Africans are still facing of still using the pit latrines?
One thing that we are doing and we should and will continue doing, which is central, to our collective responsibility, is to always call for accountability, for transparency in the disclosure of sanitation conditions in high-risk communities. And these are your rural communities, these are your low-income communities, and call for a decisive action to eradicate pit latrines once and for all, because we believe that each time there is a delay, every deflection and every unfulfilled commitment places more lives at risk. And we know that sometimes, especially at the level of local government, there's a lot of feet dragging, there's a lot of corruption, there's a lot of promises being made and not fulfilled. Hence, we are saying that South Africans are presented with yet another opportunity through this upcoming 2026 local government elections. And one of the things that we are doing is to mobilize the communities to go out there and demand that there should be accountability, and they can only do that through the electoral ways, or rather through the ballot.
Do you think that government is doing enough to eradicate the pit latrines?
It's certainly not. I mean, for the fact that we are a little over 3 decades now, and there are still communities that use pit latrines in South Africa, that tells you that government at the local level, it's certainly not doing enough. And you'll remember that local government is the one closest to the people. It's actually the one that is charged with delivering services to the people. And that we are still burying our kids in 2026 due to pit latrines. That alone tells you that government is not doing enough. And our role, as I said earlier, as civic groups, is to call for accountability, is to always raise awareness on these issues and put pressure on the powers that be, that we need to come to a point where there is no community in South Africa that uses pit latrines. But at this point, they are certainly not doing enough. I mean, there are still schools in South Africa that are still using pit latrines. And so we are calling on them to do better. And South Africans must raise their voice and show their displeasure on this upcoming 2026 local government elections.
What do you suggest as a way forward?
Primarily, South Africans need to call for accountability and transparency. And one of the legitimate ways to do that, it is to, go out there and register their displeasure through voting. But what we need to do also as a way forward, what me and you must be doing now, is to raise awareness continually on these issues incidents of a little girl dying because of a pit latrine must be raised. The whole country needs to know that a case like this happened, and we owe that child, I said earlier, who died in Kuzana village, more than sympathy. The way forward is that she must get justice, and the only way for her to get justice is if we eradicate pit latrines once and for all in South Africa.
All right, so that was the Managing Director of Civic Route Advocacy, Siabulela Gentile, who is speaking to Channel Africa reporter Sisi Sechalo.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Africa is set for a strong economic surge. New IMF forecasts show that the continent will host more fast-growing economies than any other region in 2026, with South Sudan and Guinea leading the pack on the back of oil and mining growth. But what's driving Africa to the top of the IMF list of fastest-growing economies in 2026? Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Simosa takes a look.
In East Africa, economic reforms are beginning to deliver results, with Uganda, Rwanda and Ethiopia posting average growth of around 7%. But analysts warn the outlook remains fragile, citing risks from climate shocks, political instability and rising debt. The question is, what's driving Africa to top the IMF's list of forecast growing economies in 2026? Econometrics Director and Chief Economist Dr. Azar Jamin shares his perspective.
There are many African countries whose economies are set to grow very rapidly. High population growth is, of course, one contributory factor to this. But there is a resources boom more generally going on worldwide. And Africa is at the forefront of this, stands to actually benefit from this quite significantly. I do believe that I think we could see a transformation of the sub-Saharan African continent in due course, so long as we can put to bed some of the political ramblings of making life running in such an election amenable.
Dr. Azar says sustained infrastructure development will be critical in maintaining oil and mining-driven growth in countries such as South Sudan and Guinea.
How sustainable they will be will depend very much on the extent to which the infrastructure is built around these mineral ventures to enable them to produce product over many years without actually collapsing. And that is a significant challenge. If you're expecting these by instantly getting people to come into the country, you're going to, I suppose, succeed.
He says East Africa's reform-driven growth can translate into job and inclusive development.
Absolutely, especially if it goes hand in hand with skills development, to be able to exploit the opportunities that are provided. I do believe that East Africa could well be the new growth frontier of the world.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samosa in Mpumalanga, South Africa.
So great news for continent of Africa in terms of growth in 2026. But I do think sometimes we need to take these figures with a little bit of caution because whilst the percentages may be high, they are sometimes off a low base. So it creates the impression of huge change when actually it's not massive, but progress nevertheless, and that we must celebrate.
Cheers to rest and renewal. Festive African greetings from Channel Africa. Go on, download the Channel Africa app. As 2025 draws to a close, we pause to honor the spirits that connect us.
Let's get it started.
The festive season reminds us of what truly matters: family, community, and unity. No matter where you gather or reflect, Channel Africa is with you. Bring your stories and voices that are shaped by the African perspective.
Something significant happened on this day. Asanda, you were a baby, I'm sure. I'm not even sure if you were born. No, you were a baby, yeah.
Yoga. Matseko is still trying to convince me and look me
No,
over
I've done that already, and you're going to come now on the journey.
I will try.
From all of us to all of you, may your season be safe and peaceful. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Let's just do it.
Your life just got easier. Get the Channel Africa app and take us wherever you go. Catch the latest news, enjoy your favorite shows, stream the music you love, and stay connected to the continent. All in one spot, right in your pocket. Simple, quick, and always with you. The Channel Africa app. Download it now on iOS and Android. Africa Update on Channel Africa with Lulu Kabu.
Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi has now accused Rwanda of violating the peace deal. Are you surprised at this latest accusation? This is literally days after a signing a ceremony, so to speak.
This is not surprising. I mean, if you ask Paul Kagame, he would also say almost the same thing. One should ask a question. The broker of the peace deal, President Trump, what is it that he wants? Why now? And why is this peace deal being signed in the Americas and not in the Great Lakes? Paul Kagame has never respected Tshisekedi, as often say. Tshisekedi must deal with the problems in his country. He has nothing to do with it. So this peace deal, obviously, when it was signed, one just looked at it and said, this will not last.
Kenny Muteba, former journalist.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time. The Upside, taking the African perspective to fresh levels.
From Channel Africa, we're about to have ourselves a good time right now. One twara. Come on, brother.
You've partnered up with Focalistic. Hey, based on a true story.
You know, it's actually crazy for you to put it like that, partnered up. You know, this is someone I look up to from a very long time. 3 years ago, we put out a single, Pele Pele.
Yeah.
You know, that was my first record with him. This project, based on a true story, the album was so highly anticipated and premeditated on our end, you know, because it's something we constantly, you know, kept on going back and forth about, but we never actioned it. It's actually quite crazy because all of this is happening whilst we are both working on our albums. You know, I'm working on my album 31314 because there's a record, 31314, the interlude. So it's like a prelude to the album, you know.
Let me pronounce it properly. Is it 31314? 31314. Oh, 31314.
The Upside, live and real. It's dynamic. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, if there's one story that's getting a reaction all over the world at the moment is Donald Trump's invasion of Venezuela and the taking of President Maduro. Well, South African trade unions and civil society organizations have strongly condemned the US's military action following reports that Nicolas Maduro and his wife were captured during US operations in the country's capital, Caracas. Now, the intervention has sparked international concern over sovereignty and international law. Our reporter Lebohang Mabange has more on South Africa's reaction.
Several labor unions and solidarity organizations in South Africa have denounced what they describe as a violation of international law, accusing the United States under President Donald Trump of imperial aggression against Venezuela. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, NUMSA, says the operation undermines democracy and Venezuela's sovereignty. Pagamile Hlubi Majola is NUMSA's national spokesperson.
The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa unreservedly condemns the Trump administration's undemocratic, dictatorial, and unilateral attack on the Democratic Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and the criminal capture and arrest of President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores. The singular act is a violation of international law, and the illegal invasion of Venezuela is aimed at strangling and killing the Bolivarian revolution.
Hlubi Majola also criticized sections of Venezuela's political opposition for supporting the U.S. action.
NUMSA notes with profound concern that elements of Venezuela's opposition, including Maria Corina Machado, have expressed support for Trump's aggression against their own country, endorsing the illegal seizure of Venezuelan oil tankers and the threat of military blockades. This is capture, plain and simple. Sections of the Venezuelan opposition have become instruments of U.S. imperialism. History teaches us that those who invite foreign powers to intervene against their own people become tools of neo-colonial subjugation.
Meanwhile, the organization Africa for Palestine also condemned the U.S. military action, calling it a breach of the United Nations Charter. Africa for Palestine board member Mohamed Desai.
We condemn the bombing by the United States of Venezuela. We condemn the violation of not only international law, generally speaking, but specifically also the violation and transgression of the UN Charter. The United States invasion today of Caracas and of Venezuela is in complete violation of all international law principles and of laws as well as policies that govern international relations.
Trade Union Federation Giusa echoed those sentiments. Giusa President Mametlwe Sibei has urged resistance against what it called imperialist aggression.
We call on the Venezuelan people, the working class, and their organized movements to resist this imperialist onslaught with the courage and determination we've seen in Palestine. In that resistance, we will rise up in solidarity against this unsolicited provocation, unjustifiable attack, and blatant act of U.S. terrorism. Their struggle is our struggle.
Desai added that protests are now being planned in South Africa.
We call not only for the international community to put an end to the U.S. bullying of states, but we also call for the reaffirmation of multilateralism. As South African civil society, we will be organizing protests and pickets in the coming days against this most recent U.S. violence and aggression.
Meanwhile, the African Union has expressed grave concern over reports of President Maduro's abduction and attacks on Venezuelan institutions, reaffirming its commitment to sovereignty, international law, and dialogue as the only sustainable solution. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has aligned itself with the AU's position, urging restraint, respect for Venezuela's territorial integrity, and inclusive political dialogue led by Venezuelans themselves. South African Union say they will continue to mobilize in solidarity with the Venezuelan people as international pressure mounts to prevent further escalation. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabanke in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Right, we are working our way towards the top of the hour and the second hour of Rise and Shine this morning, but let's take a few moments now to take you back in history and some of the events that took place. And sadly, on this day, a couple of notable deaths took place. 1995, Joe Slovo, a pivotal leader in the anti-apartheid struggle here in South Africa, died of cancer. As the leader of the South African Communist Party and a founding member of Mkhonto weSizwe, which was the armed wing of the African National Congress, he was a close ally of Nelson Mandela and was widely credited as the architect of the sunset clauses, which allowed for the peaceful transition to a multiracial democracy. So certainly a stalwart that sadly missed by many, many people, and his contribution not forgotten even to this day. And talking about Nelson Mandela, also on this day, Nelson Mandela announced his son's death from AIDS. This in a move that helped break the stigma that was surrounding HIV and AIDS in Africa. Mandela announced that his son Makgato had died of the disease, speaking openly about it. Mandela has used this moral authority to urge the public to treat AIDS as a normal illness and fight the silence and shame associated with the epidemic.
Cheers to rest and renewal. Festive African greetings from Channel Africa. Go on, download the Channel Africa app.
You're listening to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa, and coming up is the second hour of the program. My name is Peter Ndoro. Asanda Bede is away today, but the second hour of the program starts right now with the news as we say good morning once again to Joelle Muteba.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Amnesty International says authorities in Uganda have banned live broadcasts of riots and what they term unlawful processions, citing the risk of escalating tension ahead of the January 15th polls. The Ugandan government has, however, dismissed the claim, saying such reports are false and misleading. The ICT ministry says the government had not announced or implemented any decision to block access to the internet following concerns raised by rights groups. Sikula Oniala is a researcher at Amnesty International.
The authorities will want to shut down any possible means of communication with the internally and outside the country, because they are trying to seal any loophole that could be utilized by people. And as an organization, we are equally concerned, because if that happens, it makes it difficult to monitor and document human rights violations.
Guinea's Supreme Court has validated results showing a landslide election win for coup leader Mamadi Doumbouya, clearing the way for the former Special Forces commander to serve a 7-year term as president. The court also said the second-place finisher Abdoulaye Yero Alade had dropped his legal challenge on the results, which was condemned by opposition supporters online. Doumbouya seized power in Guinea in a 2021 coup, toppling then-President Alpha Condé. The court's validation required after every vote confirmed provisional results that said Doumbouya secured 86.72% of the vote in the December 28 election against a fragmented field of 8 challengers. Security sources in Nigeria say at least 9 soldiers have been killed in northeastern state of Borno after their convoy struck a landmine. Several others were injured during the attack on Sunday, while no group has claimed responsibility. The attack happened in an area where Islamic State West Africa province fighters frequently carry out attacks. More than 300 undocumented migrants have been deported at the Lesotho and Vicksburg border posts between South Africa's Free State Province and Lesotho. Border Management Authority Provincial Manager Dr. Thabo Ngoma says they have arrested at least 100 people trying to re-enter the country illegally. Dr. Ngoma says some were apprehended with illicit goods.
Just over 222,000 travelers from the 10th of December up to the 31st of December. Compared to Vicksburg, it is just over 221,000 travelers. The return phase, which commenced on the 1st of Jan to date, for Masero Bridge, we've already processed 47,000 travelers into both directions, to Lesotho and into RSA. For Vicksburg, it's just over 42,000 travelers.
And finally, thousands of supporters of Nicolas Maduro have rallied in the Venezuelan capital Caracas to demand that the ousted president be returned from the United States, where he's appeared in court on drug trafficking and terrorism charges. The Caracas march followed a ceremony in which Maduro's deputy Delcy Rodriguez was sworn in as acting president. The BBC's Will Grant has the details.
En el nombre de Dios Todopoderoso.
Rather than address a full chamber of deputies, Delcy Rodriguez was sworn in by her brother, Jorge, the head of the National Assembly, while flanked by military leaders. In her swearing-in ceremony, she said the forced removal of her predecessor from power amounted to a kidnapping, and referred to Nicolas Maduro and his wife as hostages in the United States of America.
Vengo con dolor por el secuestro de dos héroes.
She said it pained her to be there but that she was still honoured to become Venezuela's first woman president.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Egypt and Nigeria are through to the quarterfinals of the AFCON on the third day of knockout phases. And Novak Djokovic pulls out of Australian Open lead-up in Adelaide. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
From Africa's broadcast capital to the furthest corners of the globe, this is Rise and Shine. Every weekday mornings on Channel Africa.
Coming up in this hour, we'll be taking a look at one of the biggest stories I suspect will be for the year. President Trump's invasion of Venezuela and capture of the country's president, Nicolas Maduro. He appeared in a New York court yesterday. At the same time, the UN Security Council was holding a emergency session, and we'll unpack what came out of that. And also Guinea-Bissau elections. Well, the country's authorities have endorsed the re-election of the current president. Again, another story that we'll be unpacking. You're listening to the second hour of Rise and Shine. We're streaming live on channelafrica.co.za and also on our mobile app. Go to your app store, look for SABC Plus, SABC PLUS, and look for Channel Africa. My name is Peter Ndoro. Thanks for joining us.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week. The Midnight Snack, 12 to 3 a.m.
Muranziwa wa mina. Muranziwa means my love in Xitsonga. So if you're listening to this, just know that you are my love. Yes. You and I are in item. We're dating. We are together. So I love you, baby. Why are you blushing? Why are you blushing? Like, haven't you heard somebody confessing their love to you? I mean, you gotta get used to it now, because I'm gonna tell you this every day, that I love you. I can tell you, there are so many people who are never told they are loved. I come to the studio every Monday, 12 to 3, because I've got an appointment with you. I take you serious. Forget about the other person, right? Moranziwa.
Midnight Snack, every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, let's take a look at this story now. The United Nations Security Council yesterday convened to discuss the U.S. military operation that led to the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, who's now facing trial in New York on drug-related charges, including conspiracy to commit narco-terrorism. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has expressed concern that the U.S. action could further destabilize Venezuela, warning of a possible escalation of instability in the country. Meanwhile, during his first court appearance, Maduro pleaded not guilty, telling the judge that he remains the president of Venezuela and he's not guilty of anything that has been mentioned. His wife, Celia Flores, also entered a plea of not guilty. Well, for more on this, we're now joined on the line by Professor Bheki Mngombezulu, who's a political scientist and international relations analyst, and also the director for the Center for the Advancement of Non-Racialism and Democracy at the Nelson Mandela University. Prof, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, and Happy New Year.
Good morning, Peter. Compliments of the New Year. Good 2026 to you and to your listeners and your colleagues.
So let's start with this Security Council debate. And I suppose, given that the US has veto, it went as expected. No outcome.
No, Peter, it was a foregone conclusion that the UN security discussion would not amount to anything. I've always made the point that, in my view, The UN Security Council is one of the most undemocratic institutions. First of all, only 5 countries are running the entire globe. And then to make it worse, each of the 5 countries has veto power, which means that even if 4 of the 5 countries agree on a resolution, if one country does not agree, then that resolution will not see the light of day, which is what was expected with regards to this resolution. Let alone that the request was made by South Africa, which has become America's enemy number 1 following the Palestine-Israel debacle. So basically, this was just a formality, but it was a foregone conclusion that nothing positive was going to come out of this meeting.
It must be difficult for the United States, though, to try and paint a story for this, because even though they have veto power, nobody is supporting the United States' action.
Ordinarily, this should be a concern, but we are dealing with President Trump who doesn't care. The moment you adopt the I don't care attitude, it means that you don't listen to anyone but yourself. In this case, many countries are not, in fact, in agreement with the decision that has been taken by President Trump does not bother him. Ordinarily, it should, given the fact that in the context of multilateralism, you have to abide by international law and then, of course, UN Charter, and ensure that everything you do is not in contravention of those pieces of legislation. But that doesn't bother him, because the moment you try to press him against the wall, he will then threaten you that he's going to withdraw any financial support and is going to withdraw his membership. So he's basically counting on the fact that America is economically strong, then invoking what you normally refer to in international relations as economic power. You have military power, and then America ticks that box. You have economic power, America ticks that box. Then you come to diplomatic power, America does not have diplomatic power. All they do, if you don't toe the line, they then send their drones and then they deal with you. In the South African context, it's something totally different. We are not economically strong, nor are we militarily strong, but in terms of diplomacy, that is what is in line with our foreign policy agenda. But it's not going to amount to anything except having it as a gesture that this is what we have wanted President Trump to do, and he will not do it until he convinces himself that this is the right thing to do.
Do you think that this episode signals a deeper global South versus Western powers divide, perhaps, particularly around issues of sovereignty and regime change?
I would say so, because you have seen a trend. You would have seen what happened in Afghanistan. You saw what happened in Iraq. Iraq is worse off now than it was under Saddam Hussein. You saw what happened with Libya under Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. It was far better than it is currently. The list goes on. So basically, the only difference here is that in the examples that I've just cited, you had some countries supporting America, and then, of course, you had others standing against America. But at least in those instances, you would say that America did not take a unilateral decision. In the case of Venezuela, it's one president waking up on one day and then deciding that he's going to invade another country, kidnap its president and his wife, and then charge him in a foreign country, basically tampering with political sovereignty. And that is something that should not be encouraged. Unfortunately, you can only talk about it, but there is very little you can do, and we don't want a third world war, because we remember that the First and the Second World War started this way. It was just Hitler having an issue with one country, and then eventually other countries joined. But if we were to have a third world war right now, then it would be a doomsday for the entire globe, given that there are many countries that have nuclear power. So this is not something that we want. We can only hope and pray that the 3 years that are left for Trump in office come sooner rather than later, because otherwise we can brace ourselves for the turbulence.
Talking about turbulence, President Trump has issued warnings to Cuba. I mean, will he push that button? Will he do a Venezuela on Cuba, or would that be a step too far?
Anything is possible with President Trump. You recall, Peter, that when President Obama was in office, One of the remarkable things it did was to mend the walls, as it were, between America and Cuba, something that had not happened for over 58 years. So he succeeded in building relations with Cuba. Then when President Trump came in, he reversed all of that. President Obama also tried to mend the walls with North Korea. When President Trump came, he changed all of that. So in this case, he is saying that the success or the survival of Cuba depends on Venezuelan oil. So the moment it takes control of Venezuelan oil, then it means that Cuba will be on the receiving end economically. And then, of course, once you have economic turmoil, chances are you are also going to have political instability. So the survival of Cuba then depends on how Trump dreams and how he implements his dreams. If he wakes up one day and he decides that he's going to attack in Cuba, nothing is going to stop him. And then if he decides that he's going to stop oil coming from Venezuela to Cuba, nothing can stop him, because not even the UN Security Council can do that.
Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Your contributions always greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much, Peter, for having me, and please have a great year.
Thank you very much indeed. That was Professor Bheki Mngomezulu, Political Science and International Relations Analyst at the Nelson Mandela University, unpacking the UN Security Council debate following the US military action in Venezuela.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, now, Chifiwa Muhango is the chief economist at Don Consultancy Group, notes that despite Venezuela's vast petroleum resources, the country's oil industry, which was once the cornerstone of state finances, foreign policy and social spending, has been severely weakened over the years by politicization and also mismanagement and its institutional decay. Muhango explains that Venezuela has become a striking example of how political decisions can turn immense natural wealth into economic hardship. And he adds that any reform of the country's oil sector must be accompanied by broader political and institutional change. He joins us now on the line. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Happy New Year to you and to all your listeners. We are all fine here.
I suppose people would probably want to know in simple terms. I mean, this is a country that we know has the largest oil reserves in the world. How did Venezuela go from being a global oil powerhouse to its current position of severely reduced production?
Well, I think it was more around the historical patterns that transpired on the policy issues. I think it's more about policy decisions that were taken, which did not combine with the element of maintenance as well as sustainability. If you go back into the historical perspective, is that in 1976, that's when all the oil industry in Venezuela was actually nationalized, in such way there was the creation of a state-owned petroleum company, which is called Petroleras de Venezuela. In initial was exactly PDVSA. And during that time, in 1976, obviously all the oil companies which were operating owned by private sector, mostly from the US as a country origin, were actually more or less put under the control of Venezuela government in terms of production. But then I think much as the situation started very well, but as things move on from the 1976 all the way to the 1990s, especially when President Hugo Chavez took over in 1998, there was an element of politicization of the environment in terms of how the state-owned oil company was actually owned. And in a way, even a political patronage became part of the appointment process. So in such a way that most people who are qualified on the technical side point of view actually decided to leave this company. They state-owned petrol oil company. Some went abroad to the US, some went to the UK and so forth. And the environment now became a more politicized appointment rather than qualified people being taking or running these institutions. So that was an initial element that created a downfall in terms of these institutions. In such a way, no element of governance was actually ignored. Element of maintenance of the oil machinery extraction were actually also ignored, and that led to the downfall even in terms of efficiency, productivity, as well as production numbers actually started now to decline. So in essence, Venezuela used to produce almost over 10 million barrels of oil a day. It's now only producing 1 million barrels a day. So all because of the institutional decay that transpired at the state-owned oil company.
What about international sanctions? Where do they fit into this story? Did they accelerate the process of an already existing problem?
Yes, they did. In fact, sanctions just even created more fear around it. Remember the sanctions were more driven by the U.S. in terms of the exportation of the oil from Venezuela. So because of the sanctions, what transpired was then it created an element of structural weaknesses, because that meant that there was a restriction towards financing as well as technology, but also export markets. So those three elements, in a way, then fueled even the further decline of the oil industry in Venezuela.
African oil-producing countries watching Venezuela's story and experience, what are the clearest lessons do you think there are about governance, transparency, and managing resource wealth so that African countries with these kinds of resources don't fall into the same trap?
It is quite a big lesson, both not only on the oil producing countries per se, but even the mineral wealth of the African countries, because the environment in which minerals and oil, for example, are managed is similar. You've got some countries who are now progressing towards mineral wealth, and they are creating state-owned institutions to manage the mineral wealth in the countries. There are other countries on the African continent who are also trying to nationalize oil industry per se. So I think there's a significant lesson to learn here. I think the key lesson is that for instance, when you look at the reserve in Venezuela alone, you are talking about 304 billion barrels in terms of proven reserves in the country. Now, what that means that reserve does not mean that you're actually creating wealth, because production is what creates wealth. So first of all, natural resources must not be governed by strong independent institutions, which are not politicized. That's a key element here. I think the second element is that oil or minerals, they should support diversification and not substitute for it. So in other ways that you need to also ensure that you have got more other industries that are developing alongside the oil industry or the mining industry per se. So, for example, you can't ignore manufacturing, or you can't ignore, for example, the agriculture sector at the expense of having only oil and or mining or minerals as your central point in terms of revenue generation for the country. I think thirdly, it's all about transparency and accountability in terms of how you institute those naturalization policies, or even how you manage your resources from the point of view of the company that you're actually giving the license. So that there's openness and the accountability in the sense that whatever revenues are actually being derived, it's actually to the benefit of the people. So I think those are the three key lessons that one can learn from here.
I think that's a great point to end our conversation. Thank you so much indeed. It's always been a pleasure talking to you, and we look forward to more conversations during 2026. Thanks so much indeed, Shivu.
Thank you very much, Peter.
All right, so that's Chifipa Mahango, who's the chief economist at Don Consultancy Group, explaining the oil curse, sometimes is called the resource curse. Many developing nations experience richness in resource, but doesn't often translate into wealth for the people.
Unwinding with Africa's holiday rhythms. Rejoice with Channel Africa, the African perspective. Ahoy, matey!
Captain here to help, right, boys?
Set sail with us on a digital voyage like no other. Channel Africa has a treasure trove of awesomeness. That is our website and social media pages.
Tell me, why are you here?
We want you to be part of our adventure.
The winds are changing, Captain. And this time...
Imagine a world where curiosity knows no bounds, where entertainment meets enlightenment, and where every click leads to the African perspective. Visit us on our website, www.channelafrica.co.za, or follow us on Instagram or on X at Channel Africa 1. Go on, like us on Facebook at Channel Africa 1. So, spread the word. Tell a friend that Channel Africa's online variety is what they need on the web. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Guinea's Supreme Court has officially confirmed the results of the December 28 elections, clearing the way for coup leader Mamadi Doumbouya to serve a 7-year term as president. Now, the court's validation, a required step following any election, upheld the provisional results, showing Doumbouya had won a decisive 87% of the vote. Doumbouya, a former Special Forces commander, seized power in 2021 in a coup that ousted the then-president Alpha Condé. Well, for more on this, we're now joined on the line by political analyst Jean-Donald Taladzi. Thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome.
Good morning, Peter. Good morning to the listeners as well.
So now that Guinea's Supreme Court has validated the results, how credible would you say the election process has been, both domestically and in the eyes of the international community?
If one has to go by the comments by the United Nations Rat Commission, it seems that the electoral process in Guinea-Conakry was, not as transparent, not as free as one would have expected. Opposition voice suppression and seem to have been one key element as well. Making it difficult for all the the contenders to campaign freely, and media as well. The media houses were also kind of subdued by security forces and the regime. So all those elements seems to retain the credibility of the election, and that's what we now know.
All right, so 80% of the vote, the victory margin, it's extraordinarily high. What does it tell us about the state of political competition and opposition space in Guinea right now? He may not have got 87%, but is he massively popular?
That's the question. If the rule of the game or the elections were free and fair, I doubt he would have gotten 86% of the vote. But like I said earlier, if one has to go by the comment by the United Nations Rights Commission, it is clear that the election was the election process was conducted in a certain way to favor the incumbent, and hence these kind of results were announced in the dismay of the opposition parties, and also a big section of the population, which is disillusioned with the rule of Doumbouya as well.
So, former President Alpha Condé has dismissed this vote as a masquerade. How influential is Condé still, do you think, at this stage? Is his voice significant? Does he still have support inside Guinea?
Condé's voice is not that strong anymore, and one will know, will remember, as he was ousted from power as well, because of the kind of political decision after attempting to extend his rule in power. His rule in power, and he was removed. All the reforms taken under his leadership did not translate into real change on the ground for the majority of the people of Guinea-Conakry. And based on that, it will be difficult to believe that Condé will will be an influential voice in the country. Yes, as a former president, perhaps, but I don't think he was a very popular leader. I mean, he was hosted after mass protest actions in the country, and that's when the military seized the opportunity to take him out. So his voice is meaningless, and he commands no real political influence at this stage in his life.
All right, and that's where we'll leave it. Jean-Donald Taladzi, thanks so much indeed for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much, Peter.
That was political analyst Jean-Donald Taladzi speaking to us about Guinea's confirmed election results and what they mean for the country and the region. Right, we'll be unpacking more things coming up. Venezuela continues to be on the radar. But first, let's find out what's in your news headlines as we say good morning once again to you, Joelle Muteba. It's 7:30.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, Amnesty International says authorities in Uganda have banned live broadcasts of riots and what they term unlawful processions, citing the risk of escalating tension ahead of the January 15 polls. Security sources in Nigeria say at least 9 soldiers have been killed in the northeastern state of Borno after their convoy struck a landmine. At finally, Venezuela's ambassador Samuel Moncada has told a UN Security Council meeting in New York that Caracas was the target of an illegitimate armed attack lacking any legal justification, accusing the US of a flagrant violation of the UN Charter. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's get an African perspective now on one of the biggest Pan-African competitions. That's the African Cup of Nations currently underway. And watching it for us is Figile Lingwati and Brafix. Is there a favourite now emerging?
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Not as yet. Until tonight we'll make that determination about who's now the favorite. Let's start off here. Egypt secured their place in the Africa Cup of Nations quarterfinals for an 11th time after edging past a stubborn Benin side 3-1 in extra time at the Stade Adra in Agadir on Monday night. The 7-time champions were made to work hard by the Cheetahs, who exit the tournament with heads held high after a historic campaign that included their first open play win at AFCON and an end to a long winners run in the competition. Egypt now turn their focus to Saturday's quarterfinal at the same venue, where they will face either Ivory Coast or Burkina Faso, while Benin bow out after an admirable and memorable tournament run. As well now, a brace from Victor Osimhen saw Nigeria ease past Mozambique 4-0 in a one-sided Africa Cup of Nations round of 16 clash in Morocco. And Nigeria kicked off their intent as Osimhen had a close-range effort disallowed for offside in just the second minute. The Super Eagles' pressure paid off in 20th minute when Ademola Lookman scored his third goal of the tournament, latching onto a pass from Akko Adams, shaking off a defender and unleashing a precise finish into the top corner. Nigeria doubled the advantage just 5 minutes later with Adams again the provider. Adams drilled a low delivery across the box for Osimhen to power home past helpless Mozambique goalkeeper Enan Silwane. The scoring was rounded off 15 minutes from the time when Adams kept a superb individual display by smashing home Lookman's cross, completing a dominant 4-0 victory and sealing Nigeria's progression. Now, rugby news. Lions head coach Ivan van Rooyen says Saturday's win in Durban offered a clear glimpse of the future after young back Hashim Peed stepped up in the biggest moment of a tight derby against the Sharks. South African under-20 product came off the bench and finished the job, scoring the try that edged the Lions to a 23-22 URC victory at Kings Park. The coach believes the youngster's steady involvement in senior competitions this season has prepared him for those moments, adding that regular game time at URC and Challenge Cup level is helping him adapt quickly to the demands of professional rugby.
Ash is a special player. Been working hard with him in quickness, in game plan, some nice exposure, touring with us, seeing the picture. We're as excited about him as everyone is, and happy that he could make the difference today.
Captain Frankie Horn says the response during the red card period set the tone for the closing stages of the match. He adds that belief never faded, even under sustained pressure, and that the squad always felt a result was possible.
Yeah, obviously there was quite a lot of plans. As we saw it live on the screen, we said whatever happens, and we just need to deal with it and still keep playing our game. Halftime, get in, get plans. Forwards we scrum 7, we stopped mauls 5v7. So there was a really big effort, and then obviously to get width on the field. So we knew if we can just the 20 minutes keep the guys out and set our game plan onto them, getting back to 15 men, we'll get our chances. There was always that belief that we could win.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Channel Africa's got the continent's biggest football moment covered. With the 2025-2026 AFCON tournament.
Right, Uganda sharply in focus because next week the country goes to the polls. Yes, indeed. Amnesty International, though, says that authorities in Uganda have launched a brutal campaign of repression against opposition parties and their supporters ahead of the general elections scheduled for the 15th of January. That's next Thursday. The human rights organization says that actions by security forces are severely undermining citizens' rights to freedom of association and peaceful assembly. And according to Amnesty International, authorities have unlawfully targeted opposition rallies using unnecessary and excessive force, carried out arbitrary arrests and subjected some participants to torture or even forms of ill treatment. For more on this, we're now joined on the line by Amnesty International researcher for Uganda and Tanzania, Sikula Oniala. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you for hosting me.
All right, so I guess what we're seeing in Uganda is not new because everything that we've described in the intro, we've seen before. Is it worse?
Well, the situation is getting worse. We are seeing the number of arrests, as you mentioned in the intro, and the charges that these people are being subjected to, the restrictions on movement. If the opposition candidate has held 30 meetings, maybe only one was never disrupted. Every meeting that he has tried to go to the meeting venue has been disrupted by the security forces. The use of the military, the militarization of the elections. The military is not supposed to be involved in policing, normal assemblies by the public. So we are concerned about the situation, especially as we near the elections.
Does this already spell for you an election that really can't be regarded as free and fair or credible?
Well, maybe just to state that Amnesty as an organization wouldn't comment on the fairness or credibility of the election, but we are concerned that the environment is not giving the opposition and the people the chance to express themselves, to outline their manifesto to the people, and obviously the intimidations and threats being targeting the opposition supporters means that there's a group that might be disenfranchised due to the the actions of the security forces. So our concern is that a big portion of the population might not be allowed to freely express themselves, whether at the ballot or even before the elections.
So I know that you've spoken to a number of eyewitnesses on the ground. What kind of force or ill treatment are they describing and telling you, and how consistent are these accounts?
So many people we've spoken to, and many didn't appear in our publication, but we spoke to a number of people across many cities in Uganda. The conduct of the security forces is widespread. The mistreatment of the opposition supporters, the torture that we spoke about, we've heard of people being the use of tear gas, the excessive use of tear gas, the pepper spraying of people, the use of live bullets in some cases. The use of wires to, electric wires to beat up people, batons. We saw in some places the deployment of police dogs against opposition supporters. And these incidents are being reported in various parts of the country.
I guess in the end, in fact, even before we get there, have there been any reports of fatalities?
Yes, we have reported cases of fatalities in Iganga, one of the cities in the eastern part of Uganda. But we have also reports or accounts of people who are killed. We couldn't verify whether this was by the police or not, but we have cases of people who are killed by people allied to the ruling party, especially in Gulu. There's a young man who was killed. The police, of course, said this gentleman was killed by people who are chasing a thief or something like close to that. And then there's another death that was reported in Kawempe and Barara. But what we are seeing is the excessive use of the use of unnecessary force by the security forces generally across the country.
All right, Sekula, we're going to have to leave it there, but thanks very much indeed for that update.
Thank you very much.
That was Amnesty International researcher for Uganda and Tanzania, Sekula Onyala, talking to us ahead of the Ugandan elections taking place next week on the 15th.
Cling Cling. Turn up the African vibe, Africa style. Tune in on the Channel Africa app or log on to our website, channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Botswana's Ministry of Lands and Agriculture has introduced precautionary measures following the outbreak of foot and mouth disease in South Africa. The Acting Director of Veterinary Services, Dr. Kobedi Sekgale, says that the measures include heightened surveillance at border points as well as stricter controls on the movement of livestock and animal products into the country. Dr. Sekgale has urged farmers and all stakeholders to remain vigilant and to strictly observe the foot and mouth disease preventative measures. in order to reduce the risk of the disease being introduced into Botswana. Well, for more on this, we're now joined on the line by the Acting Director of Veterinary Services in Botswana, Dr. Kobedi Sekgale, at the Department of Lands and Agriculture. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Hello, good morning.
Dr. Sekgale, perhaps you can start by telling us how concerned is Botswana about the current foot and mouth disease outbreak in South Africa? How high is the risk of cross-border spread?
Let me first start by because obviously South Africa, we share a very long border of 2,000 kilometers with the Republic of South Africa. And obviously any disease occurrence on the side of South Africa pose a risk of introduction of the disease into Botswana. Seriously, this is a very high risk, considering that the provinces that share the border with Botswana have reported cases of foot and mouth, and they also continue reporting cases of foot and mouth on the South African side. Obviously, this is a very serious threat of FMD incursion into Botswana. Because also
so then what immediate measures has your country put in place to reduce that risk, particularly at border crossings and known livestock movement routes?
We have put, let me say first, the objective on the Botswana side is to reduce the risk of FMD incursion into Botswana from South Africa. 2, in case there's an incursion of the disease, we should also be able to detect it as early as possible so that we can have early response to the outbreak. So those are the 2 major objectives on the Botswana side. So we have put several measures in place. This is more like an integrated strategy. We are looking at the barriers that are along Botswana and South Africa, which include disease control fences. Where there are no disease control fences, we also have fences along the border, but we also have natural barriers. For example, rivers that we also use as barriers for movement of animals between South Africa and Botswana. So we have intensified our patrols to make sure that all these barriers are in good condition. If there's any breach, then we can attend to it as quickly as possible. We have also put measures in place in terms of the movement control measures. For example, there are certain hotspots, high-risk areas where we don't allow any movement except for slaughter, for the obvious reason that any other movement obviously might pose a risk where you are moving animals for breeding. So in such areas where there's a high risk on the side of Botswana, we only allow movement for slaughter, but otherwise any other movement is not allowed. Obviously, as Botswana, we work as a team because there are other critical stakeholders like our security organs. We work hand in hand with them to make sure that we implement the necessary controls. We also work with the communities so that, because they're the ones that understand, they know what is happening. We work them in terms of maintenance of these barriers. We work with them in terms of looking after their animals, educating them about foot and mouth, so that if they suspect or see something that is suspicious of FMD, they should be able to recognize it and also to report immediately to the Department of Veterinary Services or Botswana Police Service. We also work with the local authorities within the district that are sharing the border with the Republic of South Africa, so that they also assist and complement all the necessary measures that need to be put in place to make sure that we significantly reduce the risk of FMD incursion into Botswana. And obviously, there's a lot of political will that is supporting all these initiatives on the side of Botswana. So basically, we work with all stakeholders to make sure that we complement each other to reduce the risk of FMD incursion into Botswana.
And I'm afraid that's where we're going to have to leave it, but we wish you the best in terms of managing this outbreak, and hopefully it won't cross the borders into your country. But thank you so much indeed for your update.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the interview. Bye.
Believe that that was the acting Director for Veterinary Services at Botswana's Department of Lands and Agriculture, Dr. Khobedi Sekgale, speaking to us about the foot-and-mouth outbreak in South Africa that they're trying to prevent crossing the border.
Your life, your rhythm, your Africa. Channel Africa. Find it for free on Google Play and the Apple App Store.
Right, we are now 10 minutes away from the news, and that's the start of the edition for Tuesday of On the Move.
Yes.
And Palace is in studio. Happy New Year, by the way.
Happy New Year, Peter. How are you doing?
Did you have a good one?
I had an incredible one.
Oh, that's great.
All right, today on the Move, we all carry so many roles in our daily lives, from home life to work. So today we're looking at practical ways to leverage AI tools, not to work harder, but to work smarter.
Wow. Yeah, I think, I saw statistics somewhere the other day. I think about 45% of South Africans are already using AI, which is a fascinating uptake for me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little bit slow when it comes to taking things like that on, but I do have people in my life who now are using AI for absolutely everything, for their personal lives, for their love lives, for
love
work.
Lives.
Yes.
Find me a man.
Look, there's a lot going on out there, okay? And then in the second hour, we're going to be speaking about budget-friendly meals that are cheap, filling, and easy to prepare.
Yeah, and that's important because food is getting expensive, and yet we have to stay healthy. Okay, I'm going to be listening to that, actually.
Especially now it's January. A lot of people's pockets are a little bit dry from December.
And I want
so we need this advice.
What else? That's your two big features. So that's On the Move, AI and life. I'm fascinated by that, and I'm curious how much of AI you guys are using out there. Tune in to On the Move after the 8 o'clock news coming up shortly.
Hearty laughter and joyous gatherings. Channel Africa celebrates the season with you on the African Perspective.
Este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África, com Remo Samo e João Yabalá.
A situação do ativista angolano Serrote José de Oliveira, preso desde julho, tem gerado grande preocupação internacional. Conhecido como General Nila e presidente do movimento União Nacional para a Total Revolução de Angola, Serrote iniciou uma greve de fome em protesto contra a sua prisão, que considera arbitrária. De acordo com a Amnistia Internacional, o estado de saúde do ativista está a deteriorar-se rapidamente devido à falta de acesso a cuidados médicos adequados. Para discutir o impacto deste caso e o estado da liberdade política em Angola, vamos conversar com Dito Dale, ativista e defensor dos direitos humanos.
Nós estamos diante de uma clara estratégia de aniquilar os jovens, porque quando uma pessoa está doente, deve ser assistido. Ao não proporcionar esses cuidados médicos, o que é que o regime quer? Não quer que esse jovem saia livre e com vida da prisão, quer matá-lo.
De segunda a sexta-feira, das 20 às 21 horas locais, este é o Caleidoscópio do Canal África. Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Kapela Mutaji, tunaelezwa ya kwamba waziri wa zamani wa polisi Mbekisele ameanza
kwanza kutoa ushahidi wake mbele ya kamati ya bunge, pengine namna ambavyo anaelezea na kutoa ushahidi wake. Hii ikoje na imekaje? Hali hii ambavyo ilivyo hivi sasa inaleta picha gani kwa raia wa Afrika Kusini?
Hii haja ileta picha nzuri, kwanza inaonyesha kama usalama wa nchi hauko kwenye njia nzuri. Wakati wale wenyewe wanapewa nafasi ya kufanya ulinzi wa nchi na ulinzi wa raia, wanakwenda kukamatwa na wenyewe kuwa miongoni ya watu wenyewe wanakwenda tena kuziwia wala kuprotect maalifu. Inaleta hali mbaya ndani ya nchi kuhusu usalama kwanza wa nchi peke yake, usalama wa raia.
Darubini ya Afrika kila Jumatatu hadi Ijumaa kuanzia saa 11 kamili hadi saa 12 kamili jioni majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
The Upside, taking the African perspective to fresh levels.
Million ways them free when them buck up in a torture. Cause them I get torture.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to The Upside, Stone All things that torture. That's the name of the album.
You know, torture literally means that someone who bears a torch, like a torture, like not T-U-R, but T-O-R-C-H-E-R. So like it's a Statue of Liberty holding a torch, like keeping it burning, you know what I'm saying? Like it just implies the fact that we have to inspire one another. We have to tell it through the music and reach out to the people to know that, listen, you got light inside of you that has to bend. You know what I'm saying? Like keep it burning. Like don't let nobody dim your shine.
The Upside, live and real. It's dynamic, bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
It's 7:55 Central African time. Thank you so much indeed for tuning in every single day, Monday to Friday, between 6 and 9 Central African time for Rise and Shine. But this week we've been doing 2-hour episodes, and we'll be back to our normal dose next week starting Monday. So today in history, 1999, the day Freetown wept in Sierra Leone. In the early hours of January the 6th, rebels from the Revolutionary United Front, the RUF, launched a massive offensive on the Sierra Leonean capital Freetown, known as Operation No Living Thing. Now, this invasion was one of the bloodiest episodes of the Sierra Leone Civil War, and thousands of civilians were killed. The city saw systemic atrocities, including mass mutilations and the burning of entire city blocks. The rebels were eventually driven out by Nigerian-led ECOMOG peacekeeping forces, but the day still remains to this day a date of national mourning. 2001, a better story actually to remember on this day. John Kufuor was inaugurated as president of Ghana. This was a landmark event in West African democracy, as it marked the country's first peaceful transition of power from democratically elected government under Jerry Rawlings to another since independence in 1957.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa's Air Traffic and Navigation Services has blamed severe weather conditions for the flight disruptions at the country's main airport, OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg. Let's find out a little bit more from Nosipo Radebe.
The Air Traffic and Navigation Services says operations at OR Tambo International Airport are back to normal. Severe delays were experienced by travellers at the busy airport as the festive season wound down. ATNS spokesperson Mpilo Dlamini explains that air traffic controllers who did not come to work initially caused the delays.
Then later in the evening yesterday, we were then hit by what we call thunderstorms. That severe weather condition caused what is called flight diversions, meaning that flights could not land at OR Tambo because of the weather conditions, and then they had to divert to other airports such as Lanseria. But today, as we speak, operations are normal. The people that were not available
We make sure that they are back working today. So the issue of the temporary resource constraint has been resolved. We are stabilizing the environment as we speak. Our focus and all our intentions today is to make sure that the environment is stabilized, and we are happy that it is getting there.
Dlamini says if bad weather develops as forecasted by the Weather Service, safety will come first and some flights may be diverted, although no delays are anticipated today. Nosipho Khatebe, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, I travelled recently, and I've got to say that mine was not weather-related. For some reason, baggage was just going missing, and it was a direct flight from South Africa to Harare. And it's bizarre because you pack in 5 bags and one doesn't arrive. I'm still trying to figure out how and why these kinds of things happen. But anyway, eventually it did come, and I had a good holiday in Zimbabwe. So to everybody that I saw there, thank you for making our stay memorable and happy. All right, it's 7:59 Central African time, which means it's time for us to hand over to the team of the On the Move team.
Cheers to rest and renewal. Festive African greetings from Channel Africa. Go on, download the Channel Africa app.
Good morning, it's 8 a.m. Central Africa time, and it is time for On the Move. Stay with us, but first let's get our latest news update.
SABC News.